and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will get you detailed news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden in Colorado designates his first new national monument. US will take in some Venezuelans, expel others to Mexico. Trump angrily lashes out after his deposition is ordered. Police says 2 officers fatally shot, third wounded in Connecticut. Los Angeles leader in racism scandal resigns council seat. Florida needs $33 billion for Iran recovery, Rubio says. Social security checks are about to get a lot bigger. Kroger deal to buy rival grocery company Albertsons could be announced this week. Ukraine's Kiev area hit by Iranian-made kamikaze drones. North Korea says it tested 2 cruise missiles. Pakistan bus fire kills at least 18 flood survivors. NATO holds nuclear talks amid war tensions, Putin threats. Saudis say US sought 1-month delay of OPEC Plus production cuts. UN demands Russia reverse illegal annexations in Ukraine. Flood warnings in Southeast Australia lashed by heavy rain. FIFA opened to compensation fund for migrant workers in Qatar. And Qatar Emir thanks Putin for support in organizing World Cup. Now news in detail. President Joe Biden designated the first national monument of his administration at Camp Hill, a World War II era training site in this state, as he called for protecting treasured lands that tell the story of America. The announcement is a boost to Colorado's senior Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, who has for years advocated for the designation and is in a competitive re-election bid this November. The location is an alpine training site where US soldiers prepared for battles in the Italian Alps during World War II. We are doing it not just for today but for all the ages, Biden said, standing amid the rugged, sun-drenched backdrop flanked by mountains as far as the eye could see. The remote site was located off a winding road past an abandoned mine and an old mountain home. It's for the people of Colorado, but it also goes well beyond the people of Colorado. It's for all the people across America and the world. The proclamation formally establishes the Camp Hill Continental Divide National Monument, spanning more than 53,800 acres that will be protected and managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Many members of the 10th Mountain Division who trained at Camp Hill returned to Colorado after the war and helped create the state's lucrative ski industry, and the site is now used for outdoor activities such as hiking and camping and is home to rare wildlife. The Biden administration agreed to accept up to 24,000 Venezuelan migrants at US airports, similar to how Ukrainians have been admitted since Russia's invasion, while Mexico has agreed to take back Venezuelans who come to the US illegally over land, the US and Mexico said Wednesday. Effective immediately, Venezuelans who work or swim across the border will be immediately returned to Mexico under a pandemic rule known as Title 42 Authority, which suspends rights to seek asylum under US and international law on grounds of preventing the spread of COVID-19. Any Venezuelan who illegally enters Mexico or Panama after Wednesday will also be ineligible to come to the US under the offer. The US offer of parole for up to 24,000 Venezuelans is modeled on a similar program for Ukrainians who fled Russia's invasion and will hinge on Mexico keeping in place its independent but parallel effort to take back Venezuelans who come illegally, the Department of Homeland Security said. The moves are a response to a dramatic increase in migration from Venezuela, which leapfrogged over Guatemala and Honduras in August to become the second largest nationality arriving at the US border after Mexico. Former President Donald Trump angrily lashed out Wednesday, calling the nation's legal system a broken disgrace after a judge ruled he must answer questions under oath next week in a defamation lawsuit lodged by a writer who says he raped her in the mid-1990s. He also called the 2019 lawsuit by E. Jean Carroll, a longtime advice columnist for LA magazine, a hoax and a lie. The outburst late in the day came hours after U.S. District Judge Louis A. Kaplan in Manhattan rejected a request by his lawyers to delay a deposition scheduled for October 19. Kaplan is presiding over the case in which Carroll said Trump raped her in the dressing room of a Manhattan Bergdorf Goodman store in the mid-1990s. He called the lawsuit a complete con job. "I don't know these women, have no idea who she is, other than it seems she got a picture of me many years ago, with her husband shaking my hand on a reception line at a celebrity charity event," Trump said. Carroll is scheduled to be deposed on Friday. Roberta Kaplan, Carroll's attorney, said she was pleased with the judge's ruling and looked forward to filing new claims next month and moving forward to trial with all dispatch after New York State passed the Adult Survivors Act, allowing her to sue for damages for the alleged rape without the statute of limitations blocking it. After Trump's statement was released, a spokesperson for Kaplan's firm, Kaplan, Haker and Fink, said the latest statement from Donald Trump obviously does not merit a response. Trump's legal team has tried various legal tactics to delay the lawsuit and prevent him from being questioned by Carroll's attorneys. But Judge Kaplan wrote that it was time to move forward, especially given the advanced age of Carroll, 78 years old, and Trump, who is 76 years old, and perhaps other witnesses. 2 police officers were fatally shot and a third was wounded while responding to a domestic violence call in Connecticut, authorities said Thursday, amid an exceptionally violent week for officers across the country. The officers were shot in Bristol, about 15 miles southwest of Hartford, Connecticut State Police said, and the wounded officer was reported to have serious injuries. The officers who died were from the Bristol Police Department, State Police said. Additional details, including when the officers were shot and the circumstances of the shooting, weren't immediately released. The State Police said a news conference would be held as soon as possible. "We ask your thoughts and prayers be with the families, the officer and all those impacted," State Police said on Twitter. A neighbor told Hearst, Connecticut media that the gunfire woke her up at about 10:45 p.m. Wednesday. "It was horrible," said Robin Lawson, who lives around the corner from the shooting site. "I heard 3 rounds of 9 or 10 gunshots each." State Police tweeted that a procession would escort the fallen officers from Bristol Hospital to the State Medical Examiner's office in Farmington, about 9 miles away. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont said he was directing flags in the state to be lowered to half-staff in honor of the officers, who he said were killed while responding to a domestic violence call. The officers were shot during an especially violent week for police in the United States. On Tuesday night in Mississippi, Greenville Police Department Detective Maisha Stewart was killed and several other people were injured by gunfire as she and other officers responded to a call, authorities said. The former president of the Los Angeles City Council resigned from public office Wednesday, 3 days after a recording surfaced of her making racist remarks in a meeting that is now the subject of a state investigation. Neri Martinez, the first Latina to hold the top post on the council, announced her decision in a press release following a groundswell of outrage and calls for the resignations of her and 2 other council members involved in the conversation recorded last year. Martinez made racist remarks about the black son of a white councilman and other crude comments. Her resignation statement did not address those comments, though in words directed at her daughter, she said she had fallen short of expectations recently and added, "I vow to you that I will strive to be a better woman to make you proud." The announcement was made several hours after Attorney General Rob Bonta said he would investigate Los Angeles redistricting process that the 3 council members discussed with the labor leader, in which they schemed to protect Latino political strength in council districts. Martinez had stepped down as president Monday while still holding on to her council seat. Her decision to give up her seat came as President Joe Biden was due to arrive in Los Angeles a day after he condemned the remarks and called on all 3 council members, Martinez, Kevin DeLeon, and Gil Cedillo, to resign. Floridians will need about $33 billion in emergency aid from the federal government as the state recovers from the devastation left by Hurricane Ian, the state's Republican Senator Marco Rubio said Wednesday. Rubio said the federal government has an important role to play in Florida's recovery. He said the $33 billion is only an initial assessment of what will be needed and cautioned that the tally is likely to grow. "I plan to make sure our state receives the emergency relief it needs to fully rebuild," Rubio said in a statement. The Army Corps of Engineers needs more than $12 billion to help repair shoreliness, dredge navigation channels, and increase coastal resilience, Rubio said. The next largest share of funding, $10 billion, would go to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which helps families with temporary housing, cleanup, and financial assistance to meet critical needs such as food, water, and prescriptions. Rubio said nearly $3 billion is needed for the Department of Agriculture to cover costs from loss of crops and trees. Florida's lawmakers from both parties are keen on assuring voters going into the midterm elections next month that they are fighting for the state when it comes to federal disaster aid. Rubio is running for a 3rd term against Democratic Representative Val Demings, who is emphasizing her role as chairwoman of a House panel that oversees FEMA's work. Tens of millions of older Americans are getting the biggest raise of their lifetimes. The US government announced Thursday that Social Security beneficiaries will see an 8.7% increase in monthly payments this upcoming year, the largest increase in 4 decades. It's all part of an annual ritual where Washington adjusts Social Security benefits to keep up with inflation, or at least with one narrow measure of it. Plenty of controversy accompanies the move, known as a cost of living adjustment or COLA. Critics say the data the government uses to set the increase doesn't reflect what older Americans are actually spending, and thus the inflation they are actually feeling. The increase is also one size fits all, which means beneficiaries get the same raise regardless of where they live or how big a nest egg they may have. Kroger could announce a deal to buy rival grocery company Albertsons this week, sources told CNBC's David Faber. Shares of Albertsons jumped and were briefly halted on Thursday morning after the news that two companies are deep in merger talks. The companies could announce the all-cash deal as soon as Friday morning, sources told Faber. Bloomberg first reported the news, citing people familiar with the matter who asked not to be identified since they were discussing confidential information. The two companies could not be immediately reached by CNBC for comment. Kroger is the largest supermarket operator in the country with about 24 banners, including Fred Meyer, Ralph's, King Soopers, Harris Teeter, and its namesake brand. It has nearly 2,800 stores in 35 states. The company trails behind Walmart, which is the top grocer in the US by revenue. Albertsons is made up of 20 banners, including Safeway, Acme, and Tom Thumb. It has more than 2,200 supermarkets across 34 states and Washington, D.C. Albertsons has about 290,000 employees, according to the company's website. Kroger is the larger of the two companies with a market cap of about $32.6 billion. Albertsons' market cap is about $14.9 billion. Now it's time for global updates. Russia's forces used Iranian-made kamikaze drones to attack Ukraine's capital and Odessa regions Thursday and slammed other areas with missiles as Moscow punished the country for a fourth day for a truck bomb attack on a landmark Russian bridge. A strike carried out near Makariv, a small city located 50 kilometers west of Kiev, destroyed critical infrastructure. Throughout the capital region, residents whose lives had resumed some normalcy when the war moved east months ago again awoke to air raid sirens. It wasn't clear if the explosive-packed drones caused any casualties. Ukrainian officials said 13 people were killed and 37 wounded in the past day in Russian missile strikes that targeted 9 regions of Ukraine. Russia resumed widespread attacks in Ukraine on Monday following an explosion that damaged the Kerch Bridge, a 12-mile span that links Russia with the annexed Crimean Peninsula. The 12-mile-long bridge carries military supplies to Ukraine as well as importance as a symbol of Russia's power. The Speaker of Russia's lower house of parliament on Thursday said Russian forces struck more than 70 energy facilities in Ukraine this week and threatened an even tougher response to future attacks by the Kiev regime, although Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for the bridge bombing. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un supervised tests of long-range cruise missiles, which he described as a successful demonstration of his military's expanding nuclear strike capabilities and readiness for actual war, state media said Thursday. Wednesday's tests extended a record number of weapons demonstrations this year by North Korea, which has punctuated its testing activity with threats to preemptively use nuclear weapons against South Korea and the United States if it perceives its leadership as under threat. Analysts say Kim is exploiting the distraction created by Russia's war on Ukraine, using it as a window to accelerate arms development as he pursues a full-fledged nuclear arsenal that could viably threaten regional US allies and the American homeland. South Korean officials say Kim may also conduct a nuclear test in the coming weeks or months, escalating a pressure campaign aimed at forcing the United States to accept the idea of North Korea as a nuclear power that can negotiate economic and security concessions from a position of strength. At least 18 Pakistani flood survivors, including 8 children and 9 women, were killed when the bus they were traveling in caught fire, police said Thursday. Police officer Hashim Brohi said the bus was taking the extended family from the southern port city of Karachi to their hometown of Khairpur Nathan Shah after they heard flood waters had receded there. They were among the thousands who moved to Karachi because of the country's deadly flooding. Brohi said the incident took place late Wednesday near Nuriabad Hills Hike, which is not far from the local police station and fire service station. The proximity saved the lives of many bus passengers as both the police and fire engine reached the scene in minutes, Brohi said. The bus caught fire after the air conditioning unit short-circuited. He said rescue services moved the injured passengers to the main hospitals in Jamshoro and Nuriabad. The bodies, charred beyond recognition, will be handed over to relatives after legal formalities. NATO's secretive nuclear planning group met Thursday as the military alliance presses ahead with plans to hold a nuclear exercise next week as concerns deepen over President Vladimir Putin's insistence that he will use any means necessary to defend Russian territory. Defense ministers led the session, which usually happens once or twice a year, at NATO headquarters in Brussels. It comes against a backdrop of high tension as some NATO allies, led by the US, supply Ukraine with advanced weapons and munitions to defend itself against Russian aerial attacks. NATO is keeping a wary eye on Russia's movements, but has so far seen no change in its nuclear posture. But additional uncertainty comes from the fact that Russia is also due to hold its own nuclear exercises soon, possibly at the same time as NATO or just after, according to NATO diplomats. That could complicate the 30-country military organization's reading of the war and of Moscow's intentions. NATO's exercise, dubbed Steadfast Noon, is held around the same time every year and runs for about 1 week. It involves fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear warheads, but doesn't involve any live bombs. Conventional jets and surveillance and refueling aircraft also routinely take part. 14 NATO member countries will be involved in the exercise, which was planned before Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24. The main part of the maneuvers will be held more than 1,000 kilometers from Russia. Saudi Arabia said Thursday that the US had urged the kingdom to postpone a decision by OPEC and its allies, including Russia, to cut oil production by a month. Such a delay could have helped reduce the risk of a spike in gas prices ahead of the US midterm elections next month. A statement issued by the Saudi Foreign Ministry didn't specifically mention the November 8 elections, in which US President Joe Biden is trying to maintain his narrow Democratic majority in Congress. However, it stated that the US suggested the cuts be delayed by a month. In the end, OPEC announced the cuts at its October 5 meeting in Vienna. Holding off on cuts would have meant implementing them just before the November 8 election, at a time when they likely couldn't drastically influence prices at the pump. Rising oil prices and, by extension, higher gasoline prices have been a key driver of inflation in the US and around the world, worsening global economic woes as Russia's months-long war on Ukraine also has disrupted global food supplies. For Biden, gasoline prices creeping up could affect voters. He and many lawmakers have warned that America's long-time security-based relationship with the kingdom could be reconsidered. The UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly Wednesday to condemn Russia's attempted illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions and demand its immediate reversal, a sign of strong global opposition to the 7-month war and Moscow's attempt to grab its neighbor's territory. The vote in the 193-member world body was 143-5 with 35 abstentions. It was the strongest support from the General Assembly for Ukraine and against Russia of the 4 resolutions it has approved since Russian troops invaded Ukraine February 24. Ukraine's UN ambassador Sergei Kislitsia called the vote amazing and a historic moment. US Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield said supporters were holding our breaths and called it a monumental day. European Union Ambassador Olof Skog called it a great success that sends a resounding message to Russia that they are and remain isolated. US President Joe Biden said in a statement that the vote demonstrated the world is more united and more determined than ever to hold Russia accountable for its violations. It is a clear message that Russia cannot erase a sovereign state from the map and it cannot change borders by force, he said. Flood warnings were issued. Hundreds of homes were evacuated. Thousands more lost power and a man was missing as heavy rain lashed Southeast Australia on Thursday. Rivers across Australia's most populous states, New South Wales and Victoria, and the island state of Tasmania were rising dangerously with catchments soaked by months of above-average rainfall. Around 250 homes in the New South Wales city of Forbes, west of Sydney, were ordered to be evacuated by Thursday night ahead of major flooding. The State Emergency Service issued an order for 17 streets, including the central downtown precinct, to be evacuated by 8 p.m., with the Lachlan River expected to reach a major flood peak of 10.6 meters by Friday. Police said a 63-year-old man was last seen on Tuesday on a rural property on the Lachlan River near the New South Wales town of Hillston, west of Sydney. He was reported missing hours later, but emergency crews have failed to find any sign of him. Police on Tuesday found the body of a 46-year-old man in his submerged car in floodwater near the city of Bathurst, west of Sydney. Now a look of today's sports stories. FIFA wants to help workers in Qatar get compensation for being injured while building projects for the World Cup, one of the soccer body's top officials told European lawmakers on Thursday. Soccer federations in Europe have supported calls for a fund since Amnesty International said FIFA should contribute $440 million toward reparations, matching the total prize money FIFA will pay to the 32 national teams playing in Qatar next month. Qatar has faced intense scrutiny of the physical and contractual conditions for hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who were needed in the tiny emirate since the World Cup hosting rights were owned 12 years ago. Compensation is certainly something that we are interested in progressing, FIFA Deputy Secretary General Alistair Bell told a Council of Europe session on labor rights in Qatar. FIFA was urged on Thursday to use its leverage with the World Cup host nation by the official who publicly criticized Qatar when global soccer leaders met in Doha this year. Ensuring compensation is paid should be a key target for FIFA to secure a positive legacy in Qatar after the World Cup, Norwegian Soccer Federation President Lise Klaveness told lawmakers. Qatar's emir thanked Vladimir Putin on Thursday for what he said was Russia's support organizing the upcoming World Cup. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani also lauded Russia's hosting of the soccer tournament in 2018. After Russia made a great success in organizing the 2018 World Cup, Russian friends have provided great support to Qatar, especially in terms of organization, with the organizing committee of the 2022 World Cup, the emir said. We thank you for this and we are proud of this relationship. This will continue until the end of the World Cup. I am very happy to see you, Mr. President. Thank you. The Russian president wished Qatar success in hosting this year's event, which starts on November 20. We are also doing everything we can in terms of transferring the experience of preparing for the World Cup. You know this, we just had the opportunity to talk about it with you, Putin said. I would like to wish you success in holding this major event. I am sure that it will be a success. Neither leader specified how exactly Russia had helped Qatar, the first Arab country to host the World Cup. Now let's have a look on today's weather chart. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV, and also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.